Welcome to the Art of Dress. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit about the mystery of prints and how different prints are used by different styles. So thank you for coming and subscribing. So why are prints such a mystery, you might ask? Because you might know what kind of prints you like, but that's not necessarily the case for everyone. And even trying to describe why a print is becoming to one person versus another has been very, very difficult. So let me show you the way that the prints work according to style, and this actually becomes a lot easier to understand. So first of all, we're going to work on this wheel of styles. This is the right one for prints. And you might recognize this wheel because here you see the styles arrayed in a circle according to fabric weight, scale of design detail or motif, and also how much detail or ornament or simplicity. So number 1 at the bottom left means the lowest fabric weight, it means the smallest scale, and it means the smallest simplicity or the greatest amount of detail. And that would be elaborate romantic. And then the styles go around in the circle. So according to those three things. So the way the prints work is that every one of these, that there are 4 different kind of categories of prints. And so it's a quadrant. And so instead of seeing the styles according to fabric, line, and ornament, we see the styles according to print. On the bottom right, you see trance, what I call trance prints. And here the motifs are very multiplied. There's so many. And so I'm calling them infinite because you don't really want to count them. There are so many. And secondly, there's a system into how you see the prints, and they're very distinct. So geometrics is one big example, but there are some other examples of this kind of print. And the second category to the left there are what I'm calling sleep prints. So still an infinite number of shapes, not always small, but usually small, and not systematic and also not distinct. So those are the bottom 2. And then at the top, on the left, you see what I'm calling dream prints. And now the shapes are finite, usually larger, in fact, always larger. Finite though, and also very distinct, easy to recognize what's there, and then finally not systematic. So that's like a dream. You might see flowers just floating around, and you don't know where the next one is going to be because of where the previous one is. And then finally, awake prints. So this is the largest category, in fact, and these are prints that have a distinct quality to them in the sense that not distinct, a finite quality to them in the sense that they are countable, usually medium to large. Also, there is a system. They're systematic in some way, but they are messy, indistinct. And a reality print fits in here, and you know the expression reality is messy, so that makes perfect sense. But you'll see some other examples of this. So let's start off with trance prints. This is the most recognizable for us today. Geometrics is what we usually call them. And we'll start with Joan Small's True Gammon. And here you see her wearing a recognizable geometric, a trance print using diamonds, which is her family shape. She's True Gammon. But you can see how clear everything is and how systematic. It's a grid, really, in this case, in the case of most geometrics. And then also very, very distinct. And a second example of this kind of print, also geometric, is polka dot. And Gigi Hadid wearing her family shape. She's true romantic, so circle. And you can see a polka dot is perfect for her. Still, again, so infinite, calling it infinite, distinct, and systematic. And here's Josephine Scriver, Refined Natural. And again, basically you're calling it infinite because there's just so many. And then also distinct and systematic, a houndstooth. And then a last example, this time jump back to Joan. And so she's no longer wearing her diamond, but you can see that she can wear other shapes as well. But it is definitely systematic, absolutely very definite, very distinct, you could say. And then also still the category of infinite because it's just filled with so many, just completely filled. So now let's move on to the next category, moving from trance to sleep, meaning like dreamless sleep. So here we see, to start with, looking at Jordan Dunn. So Jordan wears the smallest of all motifs. You look how tiny these little shapes are, and yet it looks amazing on her. And you can also see that the shapes are indefinite, so indistinct, and also not really systematic, just going in kind of a random way. And another example of this time using Frida Gustafsson as refined classic. So you can see the same three qualities. Basically fill the stage with shapes or forms, kind of streamy. There's like a movement there, but it's not systematic. And there's also it's indistinct, a little bit kind of messy, you could say. A third example, I wanted you to see this one because of the squares. So even though those are squares, you can see that they're all helter-skelter. There's not really much space at all between them. So they are indistinct. They are infinite in the sense so many you don't want to count them, and not systematic. And then last, just to show you another example, but this time with Chanel Iman. And so now we've moved from the very small in terms of motif size 1 and 2 to number 13. Now in this case, the white spaces have a tendency to kind of fill in together, which adds to the sense of scale for her. And so, but what you still see is you see infinite kind of shapes, and also indistinct, and also unsystematic. So let's go back to the grid for a second so I can remind you about the other two kinds. So at the top left, you see dream. So now we're moving to finite, and not coincidentally, we're moving into much larger motifs. And the second thing about them is that they are unsystematic. So you're going to be looking for kind of like a random type of placement. And if there is a system, it's going to be denied kind of on the other part. So you can't really count on where they're going to show up. And then finally, that there is a distinct quality to the motifs. So let me show you some examples of this. Oh, before I go, I just will tell you about awake. Because the awake shapes are also medium to large, and they are also finite. So you can count them. They're also systematic, although the system might not be as regular as a grid, there is a system. And then finally, there is an indistinct quality. And you know how you say reality is messy? So reality prints are going to be in here as well. And it doesn't require that it be like a total photograph. There can be a kind of an indistinct quality of some sort. So let's start with dream, however, and move to awake. So here we have Rosie Huntington Whiteley, and she is refined dramatic. So we're starting at number 12 in terms of size. And you can see that she has quite a large cupid there, and then some flowers that are still, they're masses of flowers, but distinct, but they're not systematic. You can't predict where there are going to be more flowers. And they are also quite distinct. You can really identify the floral shapes on her pattern. So this is an unusual example, but you can see why a dream-like quality, what's the cupid doing there with the flowers? It's like a dream. So a second example is Aeneas Melly. This is a very typical type of floral. And you can see again, relatively large and finite. And you can count the flowers. And you can see that it doesn't have to be perfectly clean. in order to have distinct shapes of the flowers, and definitely unsystematic in their placement. So thirdly is Elle Fanning, who has made kind of a signature out of these sort of animal prints, and you can see they totally fit the category of dream. Finite and distinct, but unsystematic in the placement. They're just who knows where next. Leah Kebede, also True Classic, this time True Classic Alpha, and you can see the print is like just totally so perfect as a dream print. Very finite, very distinct, and very unsystematic in placement. And then lastly of this group is Yasmin Gori, and she's wearing a print where starfish, star flowers, and stars on a print. So even a bit random in the concept. So these shapes very clear and distinct and very finite and countable, but unsystematic in their placement. So you don't know for sure where they're going to end up next. Just moving around, whatever. So a dream print. And now let's move to reality or awake, to the awake type of print. We'll start with a reality one. It shows you how messy reality can look. And here you have to start with distinct shapes of surfers. So finite. And the surfers are in water, and they are in some kind of a system because the surfers are always in these whirls of water. So there is a system there, but definitely indistinct and kind of messy. So number one, reality type of print. Number two, here's a plaid. So this is a form that is finite. Definitely you can count the squares. Also, it is systematic for sure, some kind of system, but it's not totally distinct. And when you have a line one place, you don't necessarily, it's like fuzzy or it's asymmetrical or something. So it gives you this indistinct quality, and plaids fit into this category. Another one is getting into abstract prints. So this is an example of one kind of abstract print done almost in stripes. So there is a system, but still it's finite. You can absolutely go through and look at the shapes and count them, but it is also distinctly indefinite or there's a system, but it is indistinct. Okay, so absolutely not clean in the way that you would expect. So here is another example, again, another kind of abstract print. Once again, finite in its sections, and it has a system, but it is definitely indistinct, like messy, you could call it. And then last but not least, the irregular stripe. So here what you see is it is definitely finite. You can count the stripes. You can also see the system. You can see that they are arrayed in in like a repetition, but it is not the distinct kind of symmetrical it's not the kind of distinct symmetrical kind of pattern that you would look for in a grid. So those are the 4 different types of prints according to the different types of people who wear them. And as I showed you, 3 in the outside for every one of them, and then for just the dream prints, that includes both of the True Classics. So now there's something else that I can show you once we've done this, and that is I can show you the connection between the space of neckline, the spacing of the necklines, and the prints themselves. So that's going to be the next video, and I look forward to sharing that with you in approximately a week. And in the meantime, thank you very much for coming and for subscribing, and please take care.